Hello and welcome to the show today. Tonight we have Miss Maureen Wood. She is the Rockdale County Juvenile Court Judge, and Miss Maureen has been the Juvenile Court Judge since 2016. She received a Bachelor's of Science degree in Mathematics from Spelman College in Atlanta and obtained her Jewish doctorate in degree from University of Tennessee College of Law in Knoxville, Tennessee. So welcome, Miss Wood. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great.
Yes, so go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been in Rockdale County, and all that other good stuff.
Absolutely. So I actually moved to Rockdale County in 2008. I have been here ever since. I've raised my children here. Two of them are grown, one is still in school. My husband and I had a law firm here in Conyers for over a decade before I was appointed to the juvenile court bench in 2016 by Judge David Irwin. And I was reappointed in 2020. So I have dedicated my entire legal career to representing the people of Rockdale County. This is my community. I love it. And that's why I'm running for judge for Superior Court.
And on your resume there, it talked about you're one of the small but growing number of child welfare law specialists in the state of Georgia. Tell us a little bit more about that.
That's correct. So there are 76 child welfare law specialists in the state of Georgia. That's judges and attorneys. That is a special test that you take. It's kind of like a mini bar exam. It takes about a day to take it. And you have a certification. It's a national certification as an expert in child welfare law. So those are all things concerning children who've been abused or neglected. And so I am one of 11 judges and one of 76 judges and attorneys in the entire state of Georgia that has that certification. And I got it because I think it's important to, I'm a lifelong learner. I love to learn. And I think it's very important to be the very best of the best when it comes to representing people in the community. I was a lawyer before I was a judge, and I got that certification back in 2013. And so I thought it was important.
And before your appointment, did we have a juvenile court, or how did
We
that
did.
happen? Okay.
We did. So we actually had another judge who was the juvenile court judge, and he had been for several years. His name was Judge William Schneider. And so I was appointed after Judge Schneider in 2016. I like to tell people there are two ways that judges become judges in Georgia. Either they're appointed or they become elected. And in Georgia, all the juvenile court judges are appointed by Superior Court because juvenile court used to not exist. All of those cases used to be heard by the Superior Court. So it wasn't until the 1900s, the early 1900s, that the juvenile courts were created out of the Superior Court. So that's why I tell people I'm already doing a lot of the job, because juvenile court is the only other court that hears the same kind of cases that you hear in Superior Court.
And when I'm thinking juvenile, are we talking about young kids here?
Yeah.
So how does that look throughout your day to day?
Oh gosh. Okay. So I hear every single case of a child that's been abused or neglected that comes through Rockdale County. So those are all your cases where children come into foster care. I'm the one that makes the decision on those cases. I have to have those really tough hearings where I decide whether a parent's rights are terminated to their children. That's the civil death penalty. That's what the Georgia Supreme Court has called those cases. I also hear all the delinquency cases. So that's young people under the age of 17 who've committed a crime, whether it's a misdemeanor or a felony. I hear those cases. Now, there's a special class of felonies that are so serious that if children commit them anywhere between the ages of 13 all the way up to 17, they'll be charged as adults. But even in those cases, those can be transferred down from Superior Court to the juvenile court. And that does happen.
And I have seen that. I have seen that where, like, depending on what type of crime, they will charge them with an adult. So,
but even when they get initially charged as adult, it's been twice this year that young people have been charged as adults. One of the cases was a aggravated sodomy case. The other case was a armed robbery with a firearm case. Both of those cases, those young people have been sitting in detention for 2 years. And they were facing adult sentences. And those cases ended up being transferred from the Superior Court to the juvenile court. And so I hear very serious cases. I also hear traffic cases for anyone who's driving under the age of 17. If they get a speeding ticket, I hear it. If they get in an accident, I hear those. Yeah, my court hears transfers from probate court. Those permanent guardian, those temporary guardianship cases that you're having to decide on, those get transferred to me. And my court hears transfers from Superior Court on family law cases. And so juvenile court does actually a whole lot. There's even more. Like just like I could keep going, but I know you don't want us to know.
No, I like to learn too. So, and the audience probably likes to learn a little bit too about it. So on average, how many juveniles in Rockdale are facing crime at this point? Or do you have an average number? I know that's probably a high number.
So here's the thing. I hear all the cases of when young people commit crimes, whether they're from Rockdale or not. If it happens in Rockdale, I'll hear those cases. And so I have court every single week, and I have detention hearings every Monday morning. And then I have delinquency cases on Tuesdays. Tuesday mornings, we'll have arraignments. Oftentimes we'll have dispositions. Tuesday afternoon, if people want to have a trial. Young people don't get to have a jury. That's the major difference between juvenile court and adult court. That's one of the major differences. So I'm the jury. So I'm the one that hears all those cases. I have to know the legal standard. I have to decide whether they committed that offense beyond a reasonable doubt. And I also am the person who does the sentencing as well, according to the law. So every week we're hearing delinquency cases. I can't tell you specifics, but I'll say, for example, for a Tuesday calendar, we'll probably have at least 10 cases on that calendar on Tuesdays. Now, on Tuesday afternoon, when the trials are scheduled, typically we may have 2 or 3 trials that are scheduled, but everything doesn't end up going to trial. Oftentimes, just like in the adult system, they will say that they're not guilty and they want to have a trial, but then their lawyer will negotiate with the prosecutor, and oftentimes they'll settle. So we don't always have trials on Tuesdays, but those are the days that we'll have them.
And with that, how do you deal with your own personal views getting in the way and having to make a judgment that you don't agree with, but yet is the correct eyes of the law?
So that's not as hard as some people would think it would be, just because, I live here too. This is my community. And so when it comes to it is a balance. You're balancing community safety and you're balancing the well-being of the young people who are before you. But every single crime has a victim, every single one. And so it's not as hard as people would think, because oftentimes when it comes to the law, and especially when it comes to sentencing, there's lots of mitigating factors that are taken into consideration. And that's whether you're an adult or you're a child. So whether or not it's your first offense, what type of offense it is, are there other mitigating factors? Are you on drugs? Have you been abused yourself? Those types of things. So I think that the law is pretty fair most of the time when it comes to sentencing, and we have guidelines to go by. So I don't feel bad because I didn't commit the crime. I just have to follow the law. And so and I want my community to be safe. It's important to me.
With that, in Rockdale County, I know we have the sheriff's office. Do they take the juveniles? Do they have a separate place they go to, or how does that work?
So in the state of Georgia, there are several different youth detention centers all around the state. And believe it or not, we have one in Rockdale County, but it does not just hold young people from Rockdale County. Our Rockdale Youth Detention Center holds kids from all over the state, but typically they try to keep them from our area. So Rockdale, Gwinnett, DeKalb, but sometimes the other detention centers may be full. And so they may place kids in Rockdale that are from even further out than that. The major thing is that Rockdale only houses young men. And so if it's a young lady a girl who is having to be detained, then she'll go to another facility. But we have one in Rockdale. And so, but it's kids from all over that are there. And it's literally right beside the sheriff's office on off of Road.
Yeah. And so, how would you say you describe your role and responsibility as a judge in society, and what are some of the ethical and moral dilemmas you face in your position?
Yeah. So I like to tell people when it comes to what my priorities are community safety and well-being, because I don't think you can have one without the other.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in, because you asked about my philosophies, right? I believe
Mm-hmm.
in rehabilitative court programs. I've created several in the juvenile court, and when I go to superior court, I like to say when you speak
Right.
things into existence, right?
That's right.
I'll be taking over some programs that some great judges have started. Judge
Mm-hmm.
Mumford started the adult felony drug treatment court back
Uh-huh.
when they were just starting a lot of the accountability courts. He was doing groundbreaking things with that. Judge Beals took that over. He started the adult mental health court. I created a juvenile mental health court. I preside over a juvenile drug treatment court. So I'm already doing a lot of these
Mm-hmm.
things, and so I look forward to making sure that I take that over. I believe in access to justice for every person who comes through the court, regardless of if you got $2 in your pocket, you don't have a lawyer, you're representing yourself, or you have millions of dollars and you got a whole team of lawyers. When you go
Right.
before that judge, you want to feel like you were treated the exact same way, regardless of
Mm-hmm.
what your circumstances are. That's important to me. It's important because that's what makes people have faith in the justice system, that they don't
Right.
feel like that they were treated unfairly by the judge.
Yeah.
And then I believe in making sure that we serve with integrity and transparency. And that's that part
Mm-hmm.
of the question that you asked me about. How hard is it to make
Mm-hmm.
those decisions and make sure that you're fair, right? And
Right.
it's not hard. Our
Mm-hmm.
rules require that we do that. And
Right.
so
That's part of the ethical part.
absolutely. And
Mm-hmm.
we have to. We have
Yeah.
to. Because once again, it's nothing worse than feeling like you have a crooked judge, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
nothing worse than feeling
Yeah.
like you're going to go to court and you're not going to get a fair shake because,
Mm-hmm.
the judge is biased or unfair. So,
And just like I had the superior clerk on yesterday, do y'all have training?
yes.
Like, okay.
Yes, we do. And so the judges are required at every class of court. And here's the thing. You're
Mm-hmm.
never going to hear me say that one court is more important or better than the other, because they
Mm-hmm.
all do different
The same
things.
thing. Yeah.
They all have different roles and responsibilities. There's only
Mm-hmm.
one court that does almost the exact same things as the superior court, and that's the juvenile court. But that's only because the juvenile courts were created out of the superior court. They used to be all the same court, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we all have training to go to. We as our judges training. Actually, mine is coming up this month.
Uh-huh.
And so I go to the mandatory training, but I also, because I'm a child welfare law specialist, and I have that certification, I get specialty training free of charge. In addition to that, I often get scholarships that are awarded to me for trainings. So I like to make sure that I'm learning and bringing all of that knowledge back and implementing it. It's not fair to go and you learn and then you don't use what you learn, right?
Right. Right.
And it's important to me because I don't want Rockdale County to be left behind. If there's something that is like the evidence says this is what's best or this is what's working, I want to be able to say, well, we need to do that here in Rockdale County. And so you do have to stay trained and stay up to breast. And I like to do more than the bare minimum.
Mm-hmm. And so, little on the fun part here. What are some of the craziest cases you have heard here?
Oh gosh! So
If you
I
like
think,
to expound.
yeah, we can't talk about specific cases, but I think the craziest time for cases was during COVID.
Oh,
So
wow.
a lot of the courts had backlogs and got behind. We didn't in the juvenile court because the law already had in it a provision where we could have video conference hearings. I had never had a video conference hearing before, but I as soon as COVID happened, I said, okay, guys, listen, I need you to pack up what you need because we're going to have to be able to do court from home. I don't know how we're going to do court from home, but we're going to have to figure it out.
Everybody had to learn.
There's something weird going on here. I didn't understand what was going on. I just knew. And so, but we didn't have to. So a lot of the courts had to get special permission to do their court through video and through Zoom. But for us, that was already in our rules. So we never slowed down and we never stopped. But everybody had to get used to Zoom court. So some of the funniest and craziest things that I saw were, people would log on and they'd be in the bed.
I see that on YouTube when people and the judges get mad. Some of them do.
Well, because listen, you might be in court. You're still in court. I've had people smoking cigarettes. Like, please, like, you can't smoke a cigarette in court. You know, those types of things.
I know.
So it was definitely a learning curve for everybody. I think they just thought, well, we're comfortable in our house, so we're just going to do court any kind of way. But you have to make sure, you know, court is something that's to be respected. There's a certain level of decorum. And so I think that was one of the crazy things that was happening during Zoom court. People are just, I guess, getting way too comfortable. I don't know. So that's,
we have a
question
from the audience. It says, do judges have to understand all the classes they are being taught under them?
So when you say understand all the classes that are being taught, can they clarify?
I guess, Tina, if you can clarify in the comments, we will get back to that question.
Hey, Tina, how are you?
I was going to have another fun question about your robes. Are they given to you when, like, I don't know if you have a class or like, do you purchase them, or how does that work?
No, they are not given to us. And I was so shocked at how expensive just that piece of cloth is.
Yes.
And so typically you get one and you keep it until it until it's,
and I didn't know if there was a different type of robes for different judges.
You know, they kind of let you pick your own, bro. And so they definitely have different fabrics. One of the judges who, you know, I did a lot of work in her court, Judge Sherry Roberts, she's since passed away. But at the time she said, Maureen, you want to get this robe because the fabric is breathable. And you don't think about those types of things, but when you're sitting up there, it can get real hot. So I was glad at least she gave me that advice. But I've heard of judges that have camo robes and
oh wow,
all kind of stuff. Different colors. And so but you know, just try to keep it very neutral.
I didn't know if it was a state thing or if, you know, there was a certain law for that as well.
Nope, you kind of have flexibility.
You can do your own personality with that.
You can, but you know, there's a certain level of decorum for
that too,
and so most people will just stick with a black robe, but maybe a little red on the sleeve, or maybe you know, maybe something to kind of spruce it up. But for me, you know, I know that robe, I'm gonna have it for years and years and years. So and
you can transfer that robe into the Superior Court, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You just got to take good care of your stuff, you know, make sure you get it dry cleaned, make sure you hang it, you know, those types of things. But a lot of them are sold the same places as the robes for the pastors and choir practice and graduations. And so.
Gotcha. And what's the most interesting part of your job, you think?
Oh man, every day is different. All types of different cases, all types of different facts. So I think it's interesting just to kind of hear all the different cases and have to apply the law to the facts. I also like to be the one that makes a decision.
Yeah, all right. That's right, judge.
When I was the lawyer, I would say, oh man, you know, you know, they got it wrong, or I'm so glad they got it right. But, you know, so now I'm the one, you know, it's kind of like, okay, Maureen, you know, this is your choice, your decision. You got to be the one. You can't complain, you know. So I like that part.
And again, going back on your resume here, it says Judge Wood is committed to ensuring that the court involved youth of Rockdale to receive supervision and instruction and treatment tailored to their individual and family needs. The court focus on the resources of more effective interventions and speeded resolutions to court involvement. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Absolutely. So one of the things with the juvenile court, and it's kind of how I know, you know, what's possible even in the superior court level, just because of the things I've been able to do in the juvenile court. One of the things is the law requires rehabilitative programs for youthful offenders. And the reason for that is these are children who are still learning who they are and who they're going to be. Right. And so we want to make sure that they don't grow up to be criminals. We want to give them the opportunity, even though they've made poor decisions, we want to give them the opportunity not just to be held accountable, because they do have to be held accountable, but also to have the types of programs in place that will help turn their lives around. So I saw Tina Hobbs was on here. Her daughter Shannon does a lot of our evidence-based programming that we offer to the young people, whether that's MRT, which helps the young person that has criminal thinking to not think like a criminal, or whether it's life skills, ART for anger, We also have programs for young people that need FFT, functional family therapy. A lot of times what we see is it's not just the young people, but it's their families that really need help too. Their parents really need support. Parenting programs, we'll get in and we'll see that young people have a lot of trauma, a lot of unresolved grief issues. Sometimes PTSD looks like ADD and ODD. And so oftentimes that's a young person's first introduction to the learning that they need help, mental health, taking care of their mental well-being. So we want to make sure we see what's going on with that young person and what's going on with that family. And hopefully we have a program that we can put them in to help them get on the right track. And so that's what I'm talking about. Not just doing a one size fits all. Everybody gets probation. Everybody gets curfew. Right. Everybody gets the ankle monitor. Everybody gets community service. But what did you do? And how can we put things in place so you don't do it again? Right. And so everybody's different. Everybody, you know, so you really have to look at it.
Right before we get back to the chat question, so is there a way for that juvenile, it won't be on their record? I'm trying to say, I guess.
So yeah, very much like the adult system. So if you have an opportunity to have like a diversion type program, that means that if you do X, Y, and Z and you successfully complete it, then the case will be dropped like it never happened. So there are opportunities for that. It just depends on what type of case it is, what type of charge it is, because everybody's not eligible for that. So that's one example. But for the most part, if a young person, and a lot of people think, oh, it's juvenile court, so it's not, you know, it's not going to be on your record. That's not true. When they've been adjudicated to have committed a crime, we call them delinquent offenses, but they're misdemeanors or felonies. They have that on their record. Young people, if they commit a felony, they actually get fingerprinted. And so once that has happened, then they can't have their records sealed until 2 years after the disposition of their case. So think about that. If you're 15 years old and you make a bad decision and you break the law, whether it be trespassing or whether it be, you know, fighting or whatever it is, battery, family violence, battery, child molest, whatever it is that you did, right? Let's say you have a disposition and it's and then 2 years has passed since you've done whatever it is that you needed to do. Let's say your disposition was 12 months probation and do all these programs and everything. 12 months has passed. You can't ask for your record to be sealed in the juvenile court until 2 years after that 12 months. And then you have to petition the court and you have to show that you've changed and that you haven't gotten into any more trouble. So the law is very clear. Everybody's case can't be sealed. And what a lot of young people don't realize is once you have that on your record, a lot of young people do something at 15 and then they outgrow that mess and then they want to go to the military. If those recruiters come and they ask our clerk if that young person has a record, if they say they do, which they have to be truthful, then they won't get into the military. They will have they would have to literally go to their U.S. Congressman and get special permission to get into the military. So that's the other thing, you know, juvenile court is very serious because young people will have records. They really will.
Yeah. And back to Tina's question, it said the classes that are being taught to the students are citizens such as art and MRT, and the adult classes that Judge Mumford has started with the adult court. I guess that's what she was talking about.
Oh, was she asking, do judges have to get trained for those?
Yeah. Or, do judges have to understand all the classes that are being taught under them? I guess that's what she's bringing in with that.
They don't have to, right? So when we have our different trainings, they might not go into the details of what you would learn in MRT. So for example, I haven't been trained in MRT. Shallon is the expert on MRT. I couldn't go in and teach MRT, right? But it's important for me to know what is being offered, why that's an evidence-based class. And it's important for me that we have good people that are teaching those classes and that are trained. So I don't have to get trained in every single evidence-based modality that we have. But I'll give you another example for the accountability courts. Like I started the juvenile mental health court. I started the family treatment court. I enhanced our juvenile drug treatment court, and it's a model in the nation. I am on the Council of Accountability Court Judges committees, both the funding committee and the training committee. I was appointed as the chairperson for the Family Treatment Court Bench Book Committee. As the chairperson, I'm overseeing the creation of the rule book for family treatment courts, not just in the state, but it'll be the first one in the nation. And so I do get extra training, and so we're not required to do that, but it's very important. Like if you run an accountability court, you have to, as a judge, you have to get trained as part of our standards and certifications. And not only do I get trained in those things, but I also serve on the training committee to make sure that other judges are also doing their part.
Gotcha. Another question here. Why is it that you didn't have to resign to run for the judge like Judge Kerfoot did?
Oh, hi, Miss Corliss Turner. Yes, you got all the great people on today.
I do.
So yeah, it's just it's the way the law is. So the major difference between my position and the former state court judge who decided to resign and leave that seat and vacate that seat, and so those cases aren't being heard right now, is that I was appointed. And his position was elected, and his term does not coincide. So because his term for state court, he was appointed in 2021, but he had to run to keep that seat in 2022, and nobody ran against him. It's important to know that 90% of judges' races, the judges are unopposed. That's what's so different about this Superior Court race. This is the first time since 2012 that the people, not the governor, decided who our Superior Court judge was. We get to pick. And that's why normally the judges will retire early. The governor will pick. That judge will be an incumbent. And 90% of the time, nobody runs against the incumbent.
They just keep running.
And so, once you're in there, basically, is what happens.
Pretty much.
And so yeah, but the question was, why didn't he have to
why didn't you have to resign? Yeah.
Because my position is an appointed position, and the law doesn't require that. His position, with his term, and that he was elected in 2022, he would have to resign to run for this seat. And if you think about it, it makes sense. If you're sitting and you're running for a position at the same time as it creates a little bit of a
conflict. It would be an ethical thing as well.
Yeah. And so that's not just him. That is the entire state. That's just the rule.
Gotcha. And Cheryl asks, what does Rockdale do for theft of a car, case by case?
So what does Rockdale do for theft of a car, case by case? So it depends, right? But for juvenile court, for example, those are felony charges that young people are charged with. And so they would go through the same process as the adults would. And so what happens is the case is investigated. The young person will possibly be detained. Whether a young person is detained has a lot to do with the nature of the offense and what their risk factors are. And so oftentimes they will be detained. And then with the adults, you have to have a really quick turnaround. With young people, those detention hearings have to be within 5 days. So they are actually sit in detention longer than adults do before we come to court sometimes. But like I said, we have court every Mondays for detention hearings, and sometimes we have to have them more often than that. That's exclusive of the weekends. So we don't have court on the weekends either. And so once we have that detention hearing, then I make a probable cause determination the same way the detention hearings are held. Preliminary hearings are held in the adult system. Probable cause as to whether the offense occurred and whether it's safe for the young person to be in the community, or the same way, whether it's safe for the adult to be in the community while their case is pending. And so adult system, they'll set a bond, possibly depending on the case. The juvenile court system, there is also an opportunity to set a bond, but because young people typically don't have money, and so it would be the parent that would be setting the bond, paying the bond, that really doesn't have the same effect, right? Because, and so typically what will happen instead is a determination of whether it's safe for the child to remain in the community, whether they will come back to court, whether they remain detained. pending and what their risk levels are. And so then for one of the other things that's unique about the juvenile court and why I'm working all the time is because our time frames are quicker. So for as an adult, you might get charged with that theft, that felony theft. It might be a year before you go to trial, right? Well,
Right.
for the juvenile court, we have to have those arraignments and within 10 days. And so that arraignment is where you tell them what their rights are, and they say whether they're going to admit responsibility. That's like take a plea. It's a different language, but the same thing, right?
Right. Yeah.
Have a trial, and if they want to have a trial, then we have to come back really, really quickly. So we will have that adjudication within 30 days. And so it just our court just is quicker, and it's quicker because they're young people. And so we don't have a year to wait for a case to be heard. So we have trials the same way that adult system has trials. The major difference in those trials is that the adult system, you have a right to have a jury trial. You can choose to have a bench trial. Most people won't. They want to have a jury because they want to take their chances with 12 people as opposed to one judge making the determination. But those are the major differences. And then in the sentencing, if it's a felony case for an adult, then the punishment is a year or more, or a fine of $1,000 or more. And so with the adult system, with the juvenile system, if it's a felony, the punishment is it ranges. But if it's a non-violent felony, then typically the most time a young person can be incarcerated would be 30 days in a YDC, unless they have a record. And so if they have a record, then they could be committed to the Department of Juvenile Justice, and they could spend more time. And so it just that is a determining factor as well. But they could be under the court's jurisdiction for up to 24 months or 2 years on that felony case. So the more serious felonies, however, whether it's a Class B designated felony, up to 36 months, 3 years, or if it's a Class A designated felony, then that could be up to 60 months or 5 years. So it depends on the type of case. But she was asking specifically about the car cases, the car theft. So whether it's a juvenile, it runs through the same process as the adult. It just happens quicker, and you don't have a jury behind it.
Gotcha. And Tina's other question was, will the structure of the classes being taught under Judge Wood, would they be the same as they have been in the past 5 years?
Does that mean like after I leave?
I'm guessing that's what she's asking.
So I feel like I have laid a very strong foundation in the juvenile court, and I will give Judge Snyder credit. Like I came in and some of these programs, and for example, the evening reporting center, that was up and running, and that was there. And so when I believe if it's not broke, don't fix it. And so it's my hope, because we have basically laid a really great foundation. We have amazing people that are in place. Shallon is an example of that. That I would hope that somebody would come in and not want to change things up, right? Because the foundation is already laid. But this is what I tell people. There's nobody that's going to tell the judge, you have to keep that program. There's nobody that's going to tell the judge, you have to do this. It just doesn't work that way. It's your court. You get to decide how little or how much you do. And that's why it's important for me to run for Superior Court, because I know what my work ethic is, and I know what I've been able to do in the last 7.5 years. And I know that that's what the people deserve on the Superior Court bench. And so I'm running because I don't just sit on the bench. I stand for the community. It's so important to me that we have access to justice. And that means that we have quality programming, and it has to be sustainable. I'll give you an example. Judge Bills she created a model DUI court. It was a model in the state. Okay. You have to have a judge that's going to keep that sustainability going. You have to have judges that are going to bring grants and resources to the court, not lose grants and resources to the court. You have to have judges that are willing to be trained. You have to, they're willing to take what they were trained and bring it back, because that's what benefits the people. So sustainability is important. You can't take these programs and run them into the ground because you don't believe in them, because that's not fair for the people. Because if the people lived in counties next door, county up above us, county below them, and they have those programs available to them, then we should have the same opportunities in Rockdale County.
Right.
And nobody's going to tell the judge you have to do it. So you have
Mm.
to have the work ethic, but you also have to believe it's important to give people the opportunity to turn their lives around. Community safety and well-being go hand in hand.
Mm. And with the community and the Superior Court, would you kind of bring them together somehow? Because I don't know if you can, or like have town halls like other elected officials do, or how would that work? Or how, if you can, I don't know if there's state law against that or how that works.
Well, we do have certain rules, like, for example, we can't give legal advice, right?
True.
So there's certain things that we cannot do. But I'm going to be quite honest with you. For the 7.5 years that I've been in the juvenile court, I wasn't. I was focused on what I was doing in the court. I wasn't really focused on, and I was focused on building programs and making sure that things were running well there. I was doing a lot of work there. I wasn't doing a whole lot in terms of having town halls and doing that kind of thing in the community. I've started doing that more recently because one of the things that I was seeing when I was on the campaign trail, I started campaigning over a year ago. When I realized that Judge Mumford was very serious about retiring, that's when I took a serious look at, well, who's going to replace him and what does that mean for the future of our judiciary? But one of the things was when I was meeting people, they said, well, you know, we don't know we don't know you. And I said, well, you know, I've been working. I haven't been, you know, saying, look at me, look at this program. I haven't been doing that. Yeah. But I started to do some of that. I started to, if you notice, I wasn't a big Facebook person. I started to post what we're doing every day on Facebook. I started to make sure that I would have open houses and town, you know, different things so people could learn. But what I found in doing that is I had so many people say, wow, that's a great program. How can I volunteer? Or wow, that's great. How can I help? So I think I've learned, and I just didn't, you don't know what you don't know. I've learned that it is valuable that as a judge, you're not just doing the work, but you're making sure the community knows what the work is that you're doing. Because it's something to be proud of. And it's a lot of people that want to be a part of it. They want to volunteer. They want to help. They want to give an encouraging word. So, yeah, I will do that.
That's what I said with the clerk of courts last night. I'll do the same for you as well. If there's any other programs that come out that you would like to let the community know, let me know, and I'll get you back on here.
Thank you. And yes, she's doing some great things. She's done. I stopped by. She had a panel of lawyers about a month. I don't know if it's been a month. About a month ago, they gave a free advice. People got to ask all kinds of legal questions. I thought that was great because one of the things we have in the Superior Court is we have a lot of people who have to represent themselves. They cannot afford a lawyer. And the majority of the cases that the Superior Court hears are those family law cases. You don't have a right to a court-appointed attorney in a family law case. You know, it's so interesting. I was at a forum today, and one of the things that I said over and over again is facts matter, right? And so one of the things, it was jury trials, right? Oh, you know, Superior Court hears jury trials. Juvenile Court doesn't hear jury trials. Do you know how many criminal jury trials the Superior Court had in 2023?
How many? I do not know.
6.
6. Wow.
6 felony.
That's why I don't get called to be on the jury.
6 felony jury trials. 3 of them were murders. And 1 civil jury trial. Do you know how many family law cases those 2 Superior Court judges heard? Bench trials. How many divorce, child support, child custody, modification? Do you know how many?
I do not.
Over 950.
Wow.
So yes, felonies are felony jury trials. Yes, the Superior Court hears those cases, but they are few and far between. What affects you and I every single day? Well, who do we know that has been accused of a felony? Not very many people. Who do we know that had to get a divorce? Who do we know that had to go for child support? Who do we know that had to go for visitation? Who do we know that had to go for legitimation? Who do we know that needed to adopt a child? Who do we know that needed a name change? Who do we know that needed to do a TPO? That's what that Superior Court judge does day in and day out. And that's what I've dedicated my career to. For over a decade before I was the juvenile court judge, I represented people in Rockdale County. I've been committed to this communities from day one. I didn't come from Atlanta or Savannah or wherever. I've been here. I've been representing people here. And so that's important for people to know.
And then what inspired you to become a judge, and what path did you take to get there?
Oh gosh, I kind of went all over the place.
I know we're going all over.
Yeah. So I grew up, my parents said, STEM is the future. And so my parents put a lot of time and a lot of resources in sending me to engineering camps. So when I went to college, I thought I was going to be an engineer. I thought I was going to be a biomedical engineer. I thought I was going to be creating artificial limbs and doing these medical breakthroughs and the things that I was inventing. And so when I went to Spelman College, I actually met my husband there the summer before our freshman year. We both had NASA scholarships. Mine was women in science and engineering, and his was the McNair scholarship. And so we got a head start. We had to start taking classes early. I was going to do 3 years at Spelman and 2 years at Georgia Tech. I was going to be a math major and a biomedical engineer major. And so I got to about my second year and I realized there is no way I want to be an engineer. It just wasn't, it just wasn't for me. But it was important to me that I graduated in 4 years. So I maintained and I kept that math major. But I really had to ask myself, well, what am I good at? What am I passionate about? What do I want to do? And I looked around and said, I want to be a lawyer. And so I picked up, I said, I want to be a lawyer and I make a great judge. That's what I said. That's what I said. Yeah. And so I just pursued that. I'm from Tennessee. I grew up in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And so,
not too far.
Not too far. No, not at all. So I went to law school at University of Tennessee College of Law. It was really important that I had that in-state tuition. My husband and I fell in love, so he followed me there. So he followed me there. We went to Tennessee Law together. We started raising our family there. We got married there. And then my husband is from this area. He actually grew up in Lithonia. And so we moved back here. And we both worked for a little while for a law firm. I was hired. It was actually, my husband was into real estate law, residential, commercial real estate primarily at the time. And I was hired at this real estate firm because the lawyer said, Maureen, I have people that say, you closed on my house. Can you divorce me? You closed on my house. Can you file bankruptcy for me? You closed on my house. Can you do this estate planning matter for me? You closed on my house. Can you help me sue my neighbor? Those types of things, right? And he was happy to send all that business to other lawyers. And so he said, Maureen, I'm hiring you so I can keep all that money in house. And so
there you go.
It was a great getting trained. It was great because I learned how to do everything, but I wasn't learning on my own, right? I was in a firm environment. And so it was great. I can do
a little bit of everything.
Anything from do a closing to a bankruptcy to a wills and estate planning, you name it, and I can do it. And so I was grateful for that training. But we decided that we wanted to go out on our own, my husband and I. And so we started our firm, Wood and Wood. We actually started on Irish Drive in Scott Foster State Farm Building on the second floor. And then we moved over to on Irish Drive right next door to Mr. and Mrs. Head's building. It's Irish Drive, 1080 Irish Drive. That's where we were for several years. And then we moved right across the street from the courthouse. And so when I was appointed in 2016, that's when my husband decided that he was going to start working from home. And so he closed down the physical office, and he primarily does personal injury law. But it's been like I said, that journey has kind of been all over the place,
Okay. One last question, unless the audience has a question. Can you share a memorable or unusual experience from your time on the bench that influenced our perspective on the legal system? And I want to tie in that with that made an impact on your life.
Absolutely. So when I first was appointed to the juvenile court, there were over 200 children in foster care. And there were several termination of parental rights case hearings. Those are the most serious The Supreme Court calls them the civil death penalty. It's that serious because if you think about it, you have a constitutional right to raise your children without state interference. And so when you talk about a judge telling you you can no longer be the parent to your child and that someone else is going to raise that child and adopt that child, there's nothing more serious on the civil side than that. And so I was all of these TPR cases, and I was just saying, what is going on? And so I started to look. And what I saw was there were so many people, because your kid comes into foster care because of physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse. But the majority of those cases are parents who have untreated mental health issues and unrehabilitated substance use disorder issues. And here's the thing that I learned, even when I was representing parents and children. These parents love their children, and these children love their parents. They just have some really serious issues that it just makes it not safe for the child to be home. But the love is there. And so I just wanted to make sure that we were giving these parents every opportunity we could to get their lives in order and get their lives on track. So the most memorable thing for me was me doing the research and finding out about family treatment courts, and the look on people's faces when I said, we're going to start a family treatment court here in Rockdale County. And I have a $600,000 federal grant. So it's not being paid by the taxpayers of Rockdale County. This is money that was earmarked by the federal government, and we're going to use it to create this program for our families. And the great thing about that program was we have a 90% reunification rate for parents who go through that program and graduate. And so families were being reunified that otherwise would have been, rights would have been terminated. And so that's the most memorable thing for me, because, you can say, I'm the judge, I just follow the law, I just do what the law says, and I don't think outside of the box. But when you have that philosophy, you're really doing a disservice to your community, because you can follow the law and think outside the box. You can be a judge who sits on the bench and stands for the community, and the community will thank you for it.
They will. And so as we end out this segment, how can people get in contact with you?
Oh, thank you. So I'm on all, I went from like hardly being on social media at all to now I'm like on all of it, right? So you can find me on Facebook. It's at Judge Wood. You can find me on Instagram at Judge Maureen Wood. I'm on TikTok. Judge Maureen Wood on TikTok. You can email my campaign, electmaureenwood@gmail.com. My website is electjudgewood.com. And when I tell you I'm in the community, if you want me to come to your homeowners association meeting, I'll be there. If you want me to come to the school to meet, I will come to the school and meet the children at the school. I've done a lot of that. If I'm knocking on doors, I may have already knocked on your door. I'm coming to your mailbox. You may have already gotten a flyer from me in your mailbox. I just want to get out. I want to meet you. I want to meet the community, because I think it's important that you know who. I want you to look me in the eye. I want you to know who I am and what I stand for and why I'm running for this position. I'm running because I love our community. I know the impact that I can make. And there is nothing more important when it comes to the judiciary in Rockdale County now than who is going to be our next Superior Court judge. Because like I said, you're not choosing likely for the next 4 years. What statistics say is whoever that judge is that's the incumbent, 90% of the time they get reelected. And so what that means is you're choosing who your judge is for the foreseeable future. The last time we chose our judge in Rockdale County was 2012. That's the last time there was an open seat, was 2012, where no incumbent was running. So,
and 2 more questions, if you may, if you have time. I know we've been on here for a little bit.
I'm a talker.
I know. I that's why I have the show. Why do we have 2 superior courts? Is there a lower court or a higher court? What judge feels in?
Well, so no, so here's the thing. Rockdale County is unique that we only have two Superior Court judges. If you look around at a lot of the other surrounding counties, they have multiple Superior Court judges. So we only have two. Rockdale County is the second smallest geographically, but when you look at our numbers, we could probably support another one, but there's a whole legislative process. But there's not one that's, I don't want to say it's higher, but there has to be a chief. So the way the chief judge comes into play is who has the seniority, right? And so in this case, Judge Beals will be the chief judge. The chief judge has several responsibilities, but the main responsibility is maintaining the courthouse, making sure that that basically she runs the courthouse. And so so she is the chief judge. And so it's so funny. I'm the chief judge of the juvenile court. I never use that term because I'm the only one.
Right.
I'm just, I'm the only one, so I never
run that courtroom though.
I'm the chief, and so but yeah, in other counties, they do it different ways. Like it doesn't necessarily mean it's the most senior judge. For example, DeKalb, I don't even know how many, they might have 9 or 10 Superior Court judges now in DeKalb. And so they rotate who their chief judge is, right? The other thing, the chief judge is usually the one that does a lot of the presiding on a lot of the emergency matters, because Superior Court hears emergency temporary protective order hearings and those types of things. I think Newton County has 5 judges, and Newton and Walton is a circuit. And so it's, the chief judge, I don't think they rotate like they do in DeKalb, but different circuits do it different ways. But in Rockdale, we have 2 Superior Court judges, and your seniority determines who is the chief judge.
Gotcha. I'll figure that way with that. And if you're elected, who will fill your position? Would that be Governor or Kemp appointed?
So no, how I told you about the juvenile court is essentially used to be part of the Superior Court. And because of that, the Superior Court judge, the chief Superior Court judge, makes the appointment. So I was appointed by Judge David Irwin in 2016. He was the chief judge. And then I was reappointed in 2020. So I'm and between me and my opponent, I have the most judicial experience. I've been on the bench 7 years and 7 months. And so I was appointed in September the 30th of 2016. So my appointment runs till the end of September 2024. And so typically what happens is around the summertime, actually it's coming up. I can't believe we're almost there. There will be advertisement in the paper, and people will have the opportunity, and they do every 4 years to apply for the job. And then it will be up to the chief judge, who will be Judge Mumford, because he's not planning on retiring early. He's not retiring until December. So he will be the one who decides. And so, the requirements are you have to live in the community. I think you have to be at least 30 years old, and you have to have practiced law for at least 5 years. I think it's very important that you have a background in juvenile work. Because the delinquency side is pretty easy because it mirrors the adult criminal system. But the dependency side is much more complex. It is the only area of the law that melts custody, abuse and neglect, policy from the executive branch. You have to know those Department of Family and Children's Services policies. You have to know lots about psychiatric information. You have to know a lot about mental health. And so you have to know a lot about substance use disorder. And so I think that side is much harder to grasp and to learn. And so I think it's important that person have a little bit of that experience. But if they don't, they just need to have a passion, a heart for children, a heart for the community, and want to be a learner, want to learn, and it'll be good. I understand that there are some people that are very interested in that position. And so it's not for me to say who they are. But it's up to Judge Mumford. And so I think he has really good judgment. He knows who the people are, the lawyers are in the community that are dedicated to working for the people. And he knows who has reputations for being great lawyers. So.
Gotcha. I had to get him on the show too, I guess. All right. Well, I appreciate I appreciate your time with us tonight, and it's gone on just almost an hour. I appreciate that, and I know you had a busy day today, and Any last closing comments before we close out?
Well, I always want to make sure I ask the public for your vote. It's important that I do that because ultimately you are deciding who your judge is. This is not a popularity contest. This is not about who's running against who. I like to tell people I've never applied for a job and been worried about who else applied.
Right.
I'm standing on my merits, my experience. And if you wonder what I'll do, just look at what I've been doing for the last 7.5 years. That's the biggest indicator. It's not what promises people make. It's what it's not you we can all talk the talk, but what has been your walk? What have you shown? I've never applied for a job that I didn't want. I haven't been, this isn't my fourth time on the ballot in 2 election cycles in 7 years. I'm not hopping around from position to position. I'm running for this job because it's a once in a 12-year opportunity for our community to decide. I'm running because I love our community. I'm committed. I'm the only candidate who's dedicated their career to serving the people of Rockdale County. I'm not running because it's the next step for me. I'm running because I love this community and I know the impact that I can make. And I would love to ask for your vote and your support.
Yes. All right. And I think that will do it for us tonight. And I appreciate y'all for coming on tonight and asking your questions and making it very informative. Thank y'all, and y'all have a good night. Thank you, Judge. Yes.